Welcome, friends. My name is Risha Mandelkorn, and I'm the Manager of Community Collaboration at Aurora Public Library. As we come together virtually, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement that speaks to wherever you are joining us from this afternoon. We are all immigrants and children of immigrants to Canada. We gratefully acknowledge the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge the philosophy behind the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. This contract binds people on this land to share with their neighbors so that we may all have enough. There is one dish, one spoon, and no knife. In that spirit, we honor all who came before us, our own ancestors, as well as all the Indigenous caretakers, named and unnamed, recorded and unrecorded. Through the threads of our 2020 One Book, One Aurora selection, Scarborough by Catherine Hernandez, our community has been discussing the intersection of racism, classism, privilege, and precarious housing. Scarborough follows the lives of 3 children who inhabit Toronto's low-income East End. It is an ode to a community the author knows intimately, but the intersectionality and diversity of the stories of the people she portrays are universal. It is my privilege to be hosting today's grand finale, Meet Catherine Hernandez. And we're going to begin with some opening questions to Catherine, a short reading, and then we're going to turn the afternoon over to you. Please post your questions and comments to the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Keep it going throughout the beginning of our presentation, and then we'll turn it over to you and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Catherine Hernandez is a proud queer woman of color, radical mother, theater practitioner, award-winning author, and the artistic director of Be Current Performing Arts. Her literary career exploded with the 2017 publication of her award-winning novel, Scarborough. And I'm excited to share that Catherine has authored the screenplay for Scarborough, and the film is scheduled for release in 2021. Catherine's dystopian novel, Crosshairs, is a fabulous page-turner that just came out this fall, and her latest children's book, I Promise, marks her delightful return to children's literature. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Catherine Hernandez. Welcome, Catherine, to Aurora Public Library Virtual.
It is such a wonderful honor to be here, and thank you so much for selecting my book for this event.
Well, Catherine, I'm going to start the conversation with a few questions that I've been wondering about before we turn the event over to our viewers. So Scarborough is fiction, but you do allude to your background as having informed the novel. And in the prelude of the book, you start off by writing, I was 15, you were 4. I taught you drama in a Scarborough community center. You were surviving neglect. Wherever you are, I hope you are safe, and know I loved you enough to write this book. I have to say, when I read that first piece a few years ago when the book came out, I knew I had to read the rest of it because that's what grabbed me right at the beginning. So where does Catherine the person and Catherine the writer align in Scarborough?
Oh my goodness. You know, uh, when as an artist, you always want to make sure that your art isn't about you. I mean, unless it's, a biography, like an autobiography. It's just you you were generous by offering yourself onto the table, but at the same time, it's certainly it's almost like you're offering your heart, but you're not offering your ego, if that makes any sense at all. Um, like I feel like what I offered in Scarborough wasn't about me. It was definitely an ode to a community that I loved and a community that held me during a very difficult time. And there were definitely pieces of like that were inspired or sort of like the residue is what I was standing on in order to write what I wrote. But also, in order to respect a community, you have to make sure that it's not exactly like what you have seen and heard. You want it to just be a starting point. And so for me, it's the same thing to respect myself, as also to know that it's the residue of my experiences that have created this book. But it certainly isn't about me, and and there's a reason for that. It's not so much just ego, but it's also if it's not about you, then it means that when you're editing, it means that you have a heart that is open enough for change, especially when the editor is challenging you to do better. When it's not about you, it means that you can have a nice open heart to the suggestions that they're making.
Okay, thank you. So I found the structure of the narrative really interesting, because you had different voices. There was the adult, there was the child, there was first person, there was third person, and yet everything meshed seamlessly into a whole. It was almost like an interrelation of short stories, and yet it all came together so beautifully. And it was multitasking. It was like you were multitasking your characters. How were you able to do that and keep everything so true and real?
Well, I think the most important thing with regards to your question is just like why was it structured that way? Is that if you're from Scarborough, you understand that you can't just go anywhere without seeing a neighbor and then discussing the latest gossip. So it feels very much like, start and stop, just when you wanted to just get a bag of carrots at the grocery store. It's one of the things I love about being from the East End is that there's definitely a sense of camaraderie among us because of survival. And so I wanted to give the readers a sense of that magic of our neighborhood. And so it does include like numerous perspectives about sometimes about a singular event, which I don't want to give away, but I wanted people to understand that we are a community of stories, a community of storytellers, most definitely, because Scarborough is full of incredible writers, poets, musicians, visual artists. A lot of us have stories to tell, and structuring the book in this way felt right. It felt like I couldn't have just one person tell the story because of the fact that I like as a writer, I've been gifted with a lot of perspectives from people in this neighborhood, and I wanted to do them justice.
So they say that parents cannot love every child equally. And I'm thinking it's probably the same with an author's character. And I have a feeling that one of your characters is your favorite. Could be wrong. I wonder, did you have a favorite?
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't say that I had a favorite, but because even difficult characters such as Corey, you end up falling in love with them because I mean you should fall in love with even difficult characters because then you're going to treat them with compassion and respect. Um uh, and each one of the characters have f- these features and quirks that I ended up falling in love with. Um, but I would say that, Bing, with the relationship between Bing and Edna, those 2 characters really, struck a chord with me because the way that I authored them was more like authoring into being a reality I really want in the Filipino community, where you have a mother who loves her fat, feminine, gay child and, a young boy who feels loved by his mother. And, that's something that you don't see in the Filipino community often, if at all. And it is what's beautiful about being an artist is that not only do you tell the stories of what you see around you, you can also tell the story of what you want to see around you. And so for me, those 2 characters really told me that a brighter future is possible.
So, Catherine, I didn't meet you until this afternoon, but I called that one. That was my favorite too.
Aw, yeah.
So Toni Morrison was quoted as saying, "All good art is political," and your writing in Scarborough, and even more so in your newest book, Crosshairs, is very political. Can you please speak to your activism and how that informs your writing?
As someone who is, brown in a visibly queer family, uh, you just me getting up in the morning, doing my thing, being successful is an act of defiance. Um, every word that comes out of my mouth, uh, is defiant pretty much. Um, I feel like, just being in existence is resistance. against a world that seeks to shut people like me down. And so, even if I was to write a haiku poem about doing my nails, I'm going to offend somebody, right? So, with the work that I create, I just feel like, well, might as well be bold. Might as well say exactly what I want to say. In this case, in Scarborough, is that what can a community achieve despite not having the resources, and also why how why is it that everything that each character does right in the novel is actually against the rules, especially Miss Hina? That's like a big question that I had, especially because having done frontline work, oftentimes the best action you can do for the people you're serving is against the rules of a system that really doesn't have their interests at heart, right? That's a statement I wanted to make with this particular book. And what's so interesting is that I just told a story, and did I know that it was going to be used as part of required reading for nurses, social workers, lawyers? I didn't know that at all. Um, and poli sci students, I had no clue that it would resonate with those educators, but it did, because I was just telling people about a reality that I was living at that time, and still living, because I still live here in Scarborough. But yeah, and I didn't know that just simply telling people about this reality was enough to move the hearts of thousands of students. That was something that was a surprise. So sometimes even just expressing myself, you don't realize the ripple effects in society. I'm very honored by that people feel so strongly about the work that I create. With regards to Crosshairs, which, just in case people have not seen any material about it, but it is about a resistance made up of QT BIPOC, so that's queer, trans, Black, Indigenous people of color, the disabled, and the elderly, forming a resistance against a fascist regime that puts those populations into workhouses following uh, environmental disaster and financial devastation, much like what we're seeing right now in the reality that we're living. Um, and that book was most definitely written as a call to action, because and it's so funny, like, when it comes to a call to action, I just want my family to be safe. I want my queer family to have equal access to resources. My Indigenous family in Navajo Nation, and all nations across Turtle Island, to have access to water and good food. It was really, writing that book was just as simple as, please just let us live, let us love the way that we are. Um, and so, yeah, so most definitely, I think that the difference between these two books is that one was just saying, like, well, this is the reality I live, and then Crosshairs is most definitely smarten up, or else we're going to be facing imminent disaster. Yeah.
So I'll tell you, Catherine, I read Crosshairs when it first came out. I probably got one of the first e-copies that was out there. I could not put it down. And as a library person and as a book person, it has been like first out of my mouth with, what have you read lately? What should I read? Crosshairs is my you must read book to everybody I speak with. It's wonderful. We'll get back to Scarborough, but I have to let everybody know that if you haven't read Crosshairs, get that on your list. It is an
Thank you.
amazing read, especially during this time. And I know you started it before the current situation,
Yes.
but even more so, it's such an important book. So thank you for writing that one too.
Thank you.
So excitingly, Scarborough is being
Mhm.
released as a film, and it seems a natural fit because of your background in theater. What's the process like in adapting, a novel into a different format?
You know, okay, so I want to just step back because of all of the hats that I've worn over the last few years. Is that I am a playwright. So I started as a theater practitioner, and so I wrote Scarborough because I just wanted to dabble in writing fiction. I didn't know how to write it, and the reason why I won the Jim Wong Chu Award is because I knew that if you put it into an awards competition, that you're going to get feedback about your manuscript. And that's all I wanted. I didn't know that I was going to win. That was amazing. And I'm really glad to have had the guidance of Jim Wong Chu before he passed away. Um, and I had to sort of change hats from, in theater, you learn everything about the story, about the characters and everything through how people talk to each other, what they say about other people, la la la. And so to write a book meant that I had to create a narrative so that you can really you are your own lighting designer, you're the director, you're the actor, everything. There's no team that you're working with to create the story. You are everything. You're creating everything through your words, right? You're painting that picture. And that was a really lovely challenge. And at the same time, it felt natural because my stage directions were becoming ridiculously long. So it was obvious that I was moving towards fiction already. Then to go to adapt it into a film, I wanted because of I was receiving inquiries about optioning the film, and I was looking at the filmmakers and their reels and thinking, "Oh my goodness, I'm really worried about what my community is going to be treated like if we have like a large film unit here in our part of the city. I want them to feel respected." I was trying to think like what is the best way to do this. So then, what I did said to Shasha Nakai and Rich Williamson, who are the directors of the film, as well as the producers of with the Compy Films. Because of they are documentarians, I asked them, "Listen, is this possible? Can I, if I write the script, can you shoot it like a documentary?" Because I knew that a documentary unit is smaller. Usually, it's just one camera person and then a producer, sort of like making their rounds around an event or whatever it is to shoot footage, right? I said, "Do you think you could do that?" And they said yes. And almost immediately after, all of a sudden, we got support from Real Asian Film Festival to develop the work. We got support from Telefilm Canada to fund the project. Um, I was just thrilled. I didn't know that it was going to be so quick. Anyways, when I wrote the script, a lot what I would wrote the book out loud already. So when I copied and pasted the dialogue into the screenplay, a lot of it had already been, well, workshopped because I had already said it out loud and I knew that the dialogue worked the way that it was. However, the way that those scenes are strung together is in a cinematic format. So there is a sense of the book flying off of like the words coming off of the page, and the segments of, from different perspectives are there. But the way that it's strung together is going to be in a very cinematic fashion. Um, and as well, it's going to very much look like a documentary because I wanted it to feel that way, that people were going to be walking the streets of Scarborough, seeing things from people's perspectives. Without this kind of this like sort of slick filter that you see in high budget films. I really wanted it to feel gritty and raw, but I gotta say the community really that they were there for us. A lot of people, because Telefilm Canada, we don't that funding is very little. It's a micro budget, and people came through being paid very little to be extras and actors. The generosity of people to be on that set, to work as hard as they did, I am astounded. I'm so honored that they believed in this project as much as I did. And I'm sitting on actually the chair that the crew had gifted me. Um, it was a magical journey, and it still is going on. It's right now we're in post production, and we're looking at early 2021 for a release. But holy cow, what an amazing journey that was! And it was for me to cut my teeth on a project that was our own, it mattered because a lot of screenwriters, they really they have to cut teeth in a really humiliating way, most likely in like a writer's room, um, not feeling heard or acknowledged for their ideas. And here I am, I got to adapt my own book, learning along the way what works, what does not. Having an intuitive sense of how to make a movie because I love film, I love television, and I have worked as an actor before on set. And so, e I mean, I just feel like the luckiest person in the world. I really, truly do. I and for that crew alone. And the only sad part of it is because of, COVID, we were able to, get the last 5 days of shooting, despite COVID, lots of, safety protocol around that. But I really hope that at some point within the next year or so, the Scarborough crew can gather and celebrate in real life together because they all deserve the world after the hard work they put into this project.
And hope we can gather together in real life and see it in a theater, actually.
Yeah.
Well, so an editing teacher I once had told me that Canadians are mistaken in thinking that they cannot set their novels in Canada. But you've had two successful novels, Scarborough and Crosshairs, and not only are they in Canada, but they're very site specific in Toronto. Can you talk about your decision to be place specific in your writing?
Oh my goodness. Well, one of the things that my editor Robin So had asked me to do was, can you please make a map of all the locations for Scarborough? Um, And, I had it in my mind, like, where things are happening, and, in your mind, it becomes, like, almost like a quilt of, like, maybe this intersection is put here. Like, you kind of in your mind, you might shift things a little bit, but there's something about making an actual map and saying, Bing and Edna's apartment is here, the shelter, where Laura lives and, not Laura, sorry, Sylvie, like the Baudouin family, where they live, that's where they are, where the Trinidadian restaurant is, like all of these things, like you have it in your mind as to like where everything is and how long it takes to walk from the point A to point B. There's something about that it makes you first off, it makes you go, okay, there's a community that is really counting on me to represent them. Um, there's also this idea that, almost like, putting water on sea monkeys, like, all of a sudden your characters really feel like they're alive once that map is there, because if the map is there, that means that they're not just these figments of your imagination. They have to be able to walk from like, do they take the bus? Do they walk to the, walk-in clinic? Um how far is it from school? Like, how do you get to school if you're going from the shelter to like all these things. But it breathes life into the characters for this particular, book for Scarborough. Um, and, I I at this time when Scarborough was published, there were very few authors who were depicting our neighborhood. And certainly even fewer authors who are depicting our neighborhood in the current day. So, for example, with David Cheriandy and Carrie Ann Leung, like all three of us are known as the Scarborough trifecta, is that the Scarborough of their mind, like with David Cheriandy, is like you're looking at sort of the late '80s, early '90s, and Carrie Ann's books are like in the '80s. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're no longer living here, whereas I am. And so that's why it's beautiful to see like this legacy of Scarborough. You see like these different chapters of time in our area. And then you have people like Théa Montangy and Adrienne De Leon and Natasha Ramutar, who are definitely way more current than I am. And depicting a Scarborough that is very much today's Scarborough, right? Um, is that what people from Scarborough, they're not used to seeing themselves in literature, in media. They don't see them, so when they do see themselves, it's like they can't even believe it. And I remember telling people who are from Scarborough, like, I'm like, "No, it takes place here." And they were like, "Why us?" And I think it was because you all are amazing folks, and I hope you feel seen. And I have been at very stuffy literary engagements, everyone in their finery, and then you have this one person, you just know that they're from Scarborough. They've come all the way, and I saw one person who took, like, a go bus to come see me, and, like, all the way yeah, I can't remember exactly where, but I remember, she was there in her snow pants. She came to see me, and she just held me and cried. I've also had, I remember a man, who is, a, wheelchair user, come all the way downtown to come see me because he actually could not believe that someone was writing about Scarborough, and he just had to see me himself. And he told me that he said, I waited for hours for this wheel trans, and I made sure that I got the wheel trans a little bit earlier just so that I can see that this was real. you know, there's something about being seen. It's important. It's important. Um, Now, when it comes to Crosshairs, it was most definitely was a political decision because Canadians are very talented at marketing themselves as a welcoming, peaceful nation. When in actual fact, we haven't. There's been a genocidal campaign that has been unfolding for generations against the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. And it was important to me that the book take place in Canada so that when there is the word fascism and genocide being used, it is specifically being used to describe the Canadian government and Canadians who possess privilege. That was really important to me, and it was a big discussion with both my U.S. and Canadian editors, with my agent, about whether or not making it into sort of this almost like with Schitt's Creek. When you see Schitt's Creek, you don't get a sense as to what country this is taking place in. You just know that it's some small town somewhere in North America, and it definitely made it more marketable to an American market, American audience. So, with the question did arise at like for Crosshairs, like, do we make it so that we don't know where this is taking place? And I said, no, absolutely not. This has to take place in Canada, and I feel really proud about that decision, because on both sides of the border, for example, you have people, Canadians who are astonished and offended, um, which is fine by me. The book was not made to be a fun read. The book was actually made for people to wake up. And then you had folks in the U.S. who were surprised by how I was describing Canada, and also delighted because it was the first time that they had ever heard Canada described as such. So I'm glad. I'm glad because yeah, discomfort's not a bad thing. I think it's something we can learn from, and yeah, that's why I mean, like with regards to location, like with those two books, those are my decisions for that.
So thank you, Catherine. Would you kindly read a passage so we can enjoy a piece of Scarborough in the author's storytelling voice?
Sure. So I'm going to read the beginning of the novel. Actually, what's so funny is that I've never read this live. Uh, so I'll start with the poem leading into the perspective of Laura, who is a young girl who has survived neglect, and she is leaving her mom's apartment because her mom is about to drop her off with her dad. To all the Scarborough girls who dreamt of embraces, who, like my sister and so many, only found gold in his teeth but not in his heart, felt the brass on his knuckles but not the tender caress of his palm, who never felt the fall of rain but rejoiced in the fall of freshly ironed, blood-stained bills. To all my East End women who lick the pastry of beef patties from between their teeth and walk in rhythm to the music from each store in the strip mall, who know the song of new nails, the acrylics biting into our hands as we spin and make the poles squeak, the squeal of money earned. To all my sisters who have pushed powder for baby formula, riding the wave of how much and how come and how long and how will we, and feeling the cold tile of Warden Station against our fingertips and against the back of our thighs. To all the young mothers who carry the weight of $20 strollers aboard the bus to their next wish, praying each time we peek at the stillness of the water between coats and between stops, bowing our heads low when the po pass, singing echoes through graffiti-kissed tunnels, guarding our spliffs from the harsh wind, dandelions by our hearts. I see you. Laura. I am standing just close enough to Mommy until she speaks to me. I don't understand what she's saying, but I know better than to ask her to say it again. She puts 2 plastic bags on the floor. She opens them up the way you open up socks so your foot can fit in. They look like 2 circles. I watch. Mommy begins putting things into the circles, whatever she can reach with her arms. Her hair is over her eyes, and I don't know if she can even see what she's reaching for. I want to help her, but I don't know why she's doing this. You're going to your dad's. I look up to the wall behind Mommy's head to see if I can picture his face in my mind, but I can't remember it. I'm not sure if I'm excited. Maybe Daddy has snacks. Get all your things. We're leaving. I see Mommy has packed a bag too. I run to my Mama Duck paper cutouts on the windowsill. I gather Mommy Duck and all her ducklings into my hand and carefully walk to the 2 plastic bag circles. Mommy slaps my hands, and I watch the yellow paper cutouts fall to the floor. Not those! Stop it! Go get your clothes! I search the floor for my clothes, but all I can see are the yellow paper cutouts of Mama Duck and her babies. What will they do without me? Mommy slaps the back of my head, and my cheeks get hot. Get your fucking clothes. I find my underwear in the hamper where I put it to get clean. I find my leggings under the kitchen table where I played house, then fell asleep. I find 2 shirts in the tub where I rinsed them. They are still kind of damp. Mommy says there's no time to dry them. I put the clothes into the plastic bag circles. Mommy rolls them back out and up so they hold things. She points to my jacket. I place it upside down on the floor like I always do because it's easier to put on. I put my arms into the armholes and flip it over my head. 1, 2, flipperoo. Mommy helps me with a zipper. Hurry the hell up. She takes the plastic bags and ties one to each of my wrists. She makes fists of my hands around the handles. She kneels in front of me and wipes her hair from her face so that I can see her eyes. I haven't seen her eyes in a long time. Do not let go of these, got it? I nod. We have to be like little mice, Laura. When we leave, we have to whisper until we're outside. You understand? I nod. She gets her big bag and puts it on her shoulder. It looks heavy. Maybe Daddy is far away. Mommy looks back into the apartment and turns off the lights. We open the door. Mommy puts her finger to her mouth to remind me to be quiet. We step over all the colored paper that has been left outside our door. Mommy lifts her feet up and down softly like she's creeping up behind someone. I see her reach into her pocket, and she pulls out a silver key. She places it on a table inside the apartment, then closes the door silently. Across the hall, Mrs. Kamal opens her door. Mommy freezes. Mrs. Kamal looks at me, then looks at Mommy. They stare at each other for a long time. Mr. Kamal calls from inside. Mrs. Kamal says something back to him, then reaches for a pair of boots she left to dry in the hallway. I want to tell her so badly that I am going to see my daddy, that he is going to have snacks, and to tell her, thank you. But Mrs. Kamal is looking down at the boots in her hand, pretending she can't see us. We take the back stairwell down to the rear door. It is almost night. The wind rushes through the leaves of the trees, and it sounds like they're clapping at me, like the wind is saying something. I want to stay and listen, but Mommy brings my hood up over my ears. Come on, she says. We're going for a ride.
Thank you, Catherine. So, Catherine, we've got some questions for the from our viewers. I'm just going to remind everybody that at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A icon. And if you just type your question or your comment in there, Catherine will answer. So the first comment from Rita is, that ode makes me cry each and every time I read it. It truly resonates with me.
Oh, that's amazing. That's that means a lot to me. It's I know those women. I was one of those women, and in a part, in a way, I am, even though life has drastically changed since then, and having them feel acknowledged reminds me why I do the work that I do. So thank you.
Were there any other questions that anybody would like to either ask or to share a comment? I have another one coming in here. So the first one is, I loved, and loved is all in caps, which is very important, Catherine, and you deserve it. I love this book so much, so thank you. Scarborough is 45 minutes away from me, but it felt like a whole world away. I have lived such a white, privileged life and felt this so much while I was reading. You might have touched on this, but did you have a vision of how your book might affect the privileged white folk like me?
You know, what's really important in the work that I create, as much as I appreciate it affecting people outside of my community, is to make sure that my community really feels seen and heard. Because there are countless other pieces of literature and media out there that will speak to that community, to white cisgender heterosexual folks. And this book really was a way to, like, almost like a portal into my community and the magic that makes it Scarborough. So while I'm so happy that it speaks to you, anyone's reactions to the book outside of my community, I feel like, that I'm fine to leave it. I really have no control over it. But my focus is most definitely for my community alone.
So the next question is from Lillian. And she says, I find so much inspiration from your background and how it translates to your story. How do you find the determination to continue writing?
Whew. I think the most difficult thing with regards to writing right now, for me, is most definitely my disability. I have a couple of chronic illnesses, one of them being chronic adrenal fatigue. And so caring for myself regularly, making sure that I do my yoga, my walking, I'm listening to my body when I need to rest. Is very important to me because my body is my tool, my mind is my tool, and to carry on, uh, one thing that's really inspiring me is the book Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown, which is a really amazing read that everyone should look at. It talks about like how caring for yourself is one of the most important acts of activism. It's because when you care for yourself, it means that you are fighting against a world that's trying to shut you down. And myself being a person that does sit at some intersections of oppression and it sits at intersections of privilege. It's really important to me to care for myself, know that I matter in this world. So I'm going to feed myself good food. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to rest when I can, especially during book tours, that I'm like, for example, I'm on a book tour right now, simultaneously both in Canada and in the US, because once it's released, Crosshairs is released in the US, and it's another round of interviews and events. Is that I really have to say to myself, stop, don't look at social media, close your eyes, meditate, Maybe you just want to just watch a movie, like watch some really bad television, make a bad painting, whatever it is that you want to do, just do it because you're on such a tight schedule. You've got to rest. Then there's another thing too, is that there's a drive to know that what I need to share is important. That for Crosshairs, for example, the reactions to the book have been mixed, which is wonderful. I think it's a good thing because the people that are feeling uncomfortable by its message are exactly the people I want to. I really want them to look at themselves in a very critical way. And writing that book was actually quite intense. Unlike Scarborough, which felt like such joy, there was joy in writing it. Crosshairs felt like definitely that I was looking down the barrel of a gun the entire time because I was thinking about my family's safety. And so with that, the self-care, you have to like sort of like double it. It's that, I was allowing myself long stretches of time of going to the beach, bawling my eyes out while looking at the water, thinking about the rise of the far right and what exactly I would do in order to care for my family if uh, if a civil war was to erupt. Because we do have folks in the United States, but also there's family here. There's chosen family here who are um, definitely at risk if like in the face of fascism. So yeah, like a lot of it is just, I guess, self-caring is in short is to your answer is like that's what really helps me keep on going is self-caring, to know that my body is important. My body is my tool, so I have to take care of myself in order to go on. Yeah.
So then the next question refers to the book Crosshairs. And the question is, did you make reference to Turtle Island in the US or Turtle Island in Saskatchewan?
There is mention of basically like a partnership between the US and Canada in order to deal with any sort of resistant action because of the targeting of othered communities. And yes, and they're not in Saskatchewan, but there was a community that is mentioned. I don't want to give too much away, but I imagine the community in Alberta, not in Saskatchewan. Yeah.
The next question's from Laurel, and Laurel asks, how did you write from the child's perspective without breaking into an adult voice? Fabulous book.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, some people ask like why, first off, why are there children like speaking in the book? And that's because children uh they learn most of what they need to learn in the first 2 years of their life, and they learn like this. And so I knew that if the readers were going to read from their point of view, they would understand the basically the dynamics of all of the relationships in this neighborhood. Because in their eyes, they know who they're safe with, they know who's not a safe person to be around, they know who is in conflict with each other. I mean, that's just how kids are, right? And it felt like the right thing to do, especially because at that time, I owned a home daycare. And I love kids. I love the way that they talk because you can't make up that stuff. Um, they're so funny. They're such, they're, um, one of the things I love about my 16-year-old is that she still has the same bravado with the way that she speaks now compared to like how she spoke back when she was a toddler. And I'm glad that she never lost that. It's that, there's that magic that they have when they're kids, that you just never want to go away. And thankfully, it never went away with my teenager. It's just that it's the observations of a teenager, right? Um, with when you're writing from a children's point of view, is that for me, it was really important that I was going to get the cadence and their choice of words right, because adults can really screw that up. Adults really love to use children as a way of, like, moving a plot forward with some kind of really witty thing that a child says in the book. It really annoys me because kids actually don't talk like that. Like, when you watch a movie and some kid chimes in with some wise words, I it really does. It really bothers me because kids do not sound like that at all. They're only most of the time, they're only thinking about themselves. They don't care about imparting wisdom. They just wanna get ice cream. They just want that loony so that they can go and use it for on the gumball machine. Um, and the way that we adults really like to ruin how they speak by making them sound profound makes me angry. And so, when writing this, I wrote it, as I said, out loud. I really wanted to capture how a kid would sound describing what they're seeing around them. And what I'm happy about is how, like, I did receive a lot of critical acclaim because of that, and a lot of it's just because I was around kids at that time, and I actually wrote the book, the hour before the kids would arrive at the home daycare, while they were asleep, for nap time, and after they left for the day, and after my own child would go down for her sleep, and at the end of the day, it was it was hard, but it helped me to be around children to sort of like hear them speak like day in and day out, like 12 hours a day listening to them. Um, that really helped me get their dialogue down. I knew that I had it when I was reading for the Audible version of the book, and it was very natural. Like, it just sounded exactly like a child. Because again, they say the darn, when people say, oh, children say the darndest things. It's like, yes, they do. And adults really ruin it. Like, really, the things that I heard in my daycare time, one of them I remember saying, I asked, this one of my last daycare kids who I loved and I still love. She's so adorable. And I said, "What do you think we should plant in our garden this year?" Because I was buying seeds. And she thought for a long time and she said, "Fried chicken." And like, kids say that because you can see she was like, "I really want fried chicken." That's how kids think. They're just like, she really wanted KFC that day, obviously wanted to get her mom to buy it, and that's what she wanted. She wanted me to go and plant, like, fried chicken in the garden. But, like, you can't make that up. Adults can't make that up. So yeah, I'm glad that people like those chapters that are from the point of view of children, because it also challenges you as a writer to say, like, well, am I telling a story, or am I being a writer, and am I being an author of this reality, and I'm going to be really fancy with my words, and I'm going to write something that people are going to think is amazing. Whereas if you're writing for a kid, you really have to be like, this is what a kid sounds like. I'm just going to listen to what the kid is saying in my head and just write it down. It really kicks you in the bum, just like, caring for a kid. It's so humiliating. It feels the same way writing for children.
So Warren says, some of your characters had closure. I am curious about Victor. Where will he go and how will he change?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I gotta share this too. Is that the actor who plays Victor in the film is so adorable, like, so talented, and just like a beautiful, beautiful soul. And I was sad that because of, when you're adapting into a film, is that not every character is going to get the spotlight that they have in the book. And um, the actor who auditioned for Victor and got the part, he actually he was such a great actor that I had wished that I had written more for him because his audition was just so great. It was really great. Um, so just a, like, little tidbit is, like, you when you're writing, sometimes you have to cut stuff out, and one of the saddest parts is that in the film version is that Victor doesn't play it that large of a role. You just see that he's kind of has this. I don't want to give away too much, but I'm gonna say that it's just, you're gonna sense him throughout the entire film, but but he's not playing a major role through dialogue. But I don't want to give up way too much. Um, but the reason why I'm sharing that is because it's almost like because of adapting into a film, there was this other life, like as if Victor actually really existed, and he has, like that's what it feels like as a writer. It's like you have these. It's like it's like plants. It's like you don't know when you're putting water in if some of them are going to die, some of them are going to live. You don't know if some stories are going to make sense and some stories do. Uh, with Victor, yeah, there. I think there is it's a lot of privilege to expect there to be closure for everybody. That's the short answer to what I have to say to you. Like, if you read Sharon Bala's The Boat People, is that we're looking at people who are coming here as refugees, and I don't want to give it away, but I remember feeling at the end of the book like, what? Where's my closure? And I thought, well, of course I want closure because here I am in Canada. I was born here, so I'm a citizen. I have all the paperwork. I speak English with a Canadian accent. So I grew up with a great amount of privilege. Of course, I want closure. Whereas these people in Sharon Bala's book, they might not have closure at all. So it's the same thing with Victor, is that he doesn't he doesn't necessarily have the closure that we want him to have. He's a person that probably that run-in that he had with the cops will not be. It certainly probably wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last until we make some major changes in the way that our society runs. The story of Victor is going to continue on. So yeah, closure is it's not given to everyone, is what I want to say. Yeah.
So Marnie says, thank you for speaking to us. You were truly inspiring. Bing's talent show scene is one of my all-time favorite scenes. I have question about something else though. I saw somewhere that you have something on Audible coming up. Am I correct? And can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah. Well, okay. I'm glad that you like the Bing talent show scene. You can expect it in the film, so that's one thing. Because I know a lot of people have been asking about, is the Bing talent show scene in the film? It is, and I don't want to give anything away, but it's fun. That's all you need to know. Um, yes, I have. There's two things that right now Crosshairs is a bestseller on Audible, like just like Audible, like for audiobooks. But there's a section of Audible which is called Audible Originals, and so you can imagine if, for example, a television show and an audiobook were to have a baby, that's what Audible Originals is. So it's not a podcast. It does feel like almost like it's like a bulk download of your favorite show. Like that's what it feels like. And so what it is called Imminent Disaster, and it is a sketch comedy show. So 10 episodes, and it is the only way I can describe it is apocalypse humor. It is designed to help people laugh during these really challenging times, and it features this amazing inclusive cast that I'm just very excited about. Yeah, so it's pretty it's pretty fun, but it's dark as well, just because we're facing some ridiculous times right now where like on a Twitter timeline, you might see something about like, Trump's usual shenanigans, paired with, get your 31 pumpkin pie recipes that you have to try this fall. I mean, this is the world we live in, right? Um, where, something about the Rohingya dying in Myanmar is paired with, let's look at the new Bachelorette on TV. So yeah, we live in very strange times, and so that's what the show is reflecting, is just this. You're not sure whether or not to laugh or cry at it. Is the way that it has been designed. So hopefully you like it, and that's coming in early 2021.
Okay, so Rita has written, I found each character so well developed. I truly felt like I began to know them and miss them when the book ended. So I'm very much looking forward to a film so I can meet them again. I truly respected how Ms. Hina addressed her employees and how they continuously attempted to confine her in her position and didn't allow her to truly be in a genuine relationship with the folks that would frequent the center. I am from Scarborough and recall having white cheerleaders and black cheerleaders in high school. Um, it struck me so sad in 1983. I presently work with very vulnerable youth and families and truly attempt to be with our families without judgment and with an open heart to help us all heal. I understand that this is a reciprocal relationship and that we can't work in systems that stand superior to these folks. I have taken so much away from your book. I quote lines and bring them to my students to reflect on. I hope you know that your words have inspired and created ripples.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I've always loved hearing from educators for sure. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your reflections on reading my work.
And that was actually a perfect way to end our Q&A segment. So thank you, Catherine, very, very much. So this is all part of a big project. One Book, One Aurora not only invites our community to read and discuss the same book, but offers workshops, events, and contests that are derived from the threads of the novel. In Scarborough, Catherine Hernandez offers a glimpse into a community that finds dignity in unexpected places. The theme of this year's photography contest was, "What does community mean to you?" So I want to thank the Aurora newspaper for supporting the photography contest and to Brock Weir, managing editor, for doing the hard task of judging. And I'd like to announce the winners. First place, adult category, was Lynette Cheeseman. First place, youth category, Yuel Abraha. Second place, youth category, Dasha Rogozina. And photographs will be featured in the Aurora newspaper and in the winter virtual highlights edition of Borealis. So everybody will have an opportunity to see them. Congratulations to the winners. There were wonderful entries. Scarborough portrays a marginalized community that, although poor, remains resilient in the face of many challenges. And the theme of this year's writing contest was resilience, focusing on the human spirit and community. I want to thank Elizabeth Bishenden and Bernadette Prady for participating in the very difficult judging process. And I'd like to announce the winners. First place, adult category, is Robert Revington for role reversals. Second place, adult category, is Yafang Shi for threads, rainbows, and auroras. First place, youth category, is Keda Chia for The Cure. And second place, youth category, is Lillian Zhang for Hope is on the Rise. The writing will be featured in the winter virtual edition highlights of Borealis. Borealis is Aurora Public Library's magazine. One Book, One Aurora is led by the library, but it's really owned by the community. And every year we invite the media, cultural organizations, places of worship, book clubs, and interested individuals to connect with us, to participate, or to plan their own events. And I want to give out a thank you to the Aurora newspaper and Brock Weir for being our media sponsors, to Yvonne Kelly and the Social Planning Council of York Region, to the Aurora Newmarket Amnesty Group, to author Marnie McGuire, to the wonderful book clubs who selected Scarborough for their monthly discussions, and most of all, to you, Catherine, thank you for gifting us with this most wonderful book. And from APL to all of you out there, thank you for joining us today. Stay safe. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you.